other sentence parts. Let's take a look at the characteristics of a gerund. A gerund phrase consists of a gerund, and the gerund ends in ing, together with a complement and any modifiers. A gerund can be modified by single adverbs or by a prepositional adverb phrase. The entire phrase, with its modifiers and any complements, is used as a noun. All right, now, remember, what are nouns in a sentence? Well, your nouns are subjects, direct objects, predicate nominatives. It can even be object of the preposition, and it even can be used as an appositive. So those are all the functions, sentence functions of the part of speech, noun. And a gerund is, remember the nickname, a verbal noun. We're going to take a look at some sentences to see how gerunds function as a phrase in a sentence. Gerund phrases. Gerunds end in ing. They are used as a noun. Number one, making watches requires skilled workmen. Let's find the main verb in the sentence. What's the main verb? What's the main action or linking? Requires. All right, look what comes before it. Who or what requires? What requires? Skilled workmen. Making watches. Making watches is the subject of the sentence. It's a whole unit acting as one. The subject, acting as a noun. And it is the subject of the sentence, all right? Requires what? Workman. Workman is the direct object. All right, skilled is an adjective, it's a verb form. We have a participle, modifying workman. Now, take a look at making watches. Within that unit, making watches. Making is the gerund. Within it, making what? Watches. Watches is a direct object within the gerund phrase. But the whole unit is the subject of the sentence. All right? For gerunds, I know they end in ing. You have to find the main verb. You have to see where the gerund phrase is located to help you, because it's acting as a noun. This one's before the main verb. It's the subject of the sentence. All right, number two, eating too quickly gave him indigestion. What's the main verb, the main action, the heart of the sentence? Gave. What gave him indigestion? Well, eating too quickly gave. We have a gerund phrase, and again, it's acting as the subject of the verb gave. As a unit, it's acting together as one. Within that, eating is your gerund. All right, eating gave him indigestion. Well, there's more to it than that. Eating too quickly. We have adverbs modifying the verb form, the gerund eating. We have this adverb modifying the gerund eating. We have to, which is adding emphasis, the double O, modifying quickly, and that's an adverb. So within the gerund phrase, we have the gerund, the ing verb, plus modifiers. But as a unit, it's acting as the subject of the sentence. Let's label the direct object and the indirect object. Gave what? Indigestion. To whom or for whom? Him. Indirect object. Number three, the little girl enjoyed picking wild berries. What is the main action? What is the verb in the sentence? Enjoyed. When you have two verbs, one following the other, and if you're not sure if it's the main verb, then read the sentence without it. The little girl picking wild berries. Well, that's not a complete thought. Enjoyed is your main verb. The little girl enjoyed picking wild berries. That's the action. Now, who or what enjoyed? Girl. Girl enjoyed what? Picking wild berries. We have a gerund phrase as a unit. Picking is your gerund. Within the gerund phrase, picking what? Wild berries. We have a direct object. But as a whole unit, it's following an action verb. Enjoyed what? Picking wild berries. The whole unit is a direct object. It's the noun acting as a direct object, following the action verb, enjoyed. Number 4, we like camping beside a lake. All right, what's the main verb? If we take it out, we don't have a main thought. Like. Who or what like? We. We like what? Camping beside a lake. We have a gerund phrase. Camping is your gerund. Beside a lake is working with it. It's an adverb prepositional phrase, modifying camping. But as a whole unit, camping beside a lake is acting as the direct object of the verb like. Number 5, his hobby is building model ships. What is the action or the linking verb? Well, the main verb is the linking verb is, and it's all by itself. What is the subject? Hobby. We have a linking verb, therefore the complement needs to complement hobby, either renaming it or describing it. So, hobby, what is the hobby? Building model ships. Building is the gerund ending in ing, and the whole unit is acting as a predicate nominative, following the linking verb is. Within the gerund phrase, we have our gerund, building what? Ships. We have a direct object. Within the gerund phrase, because they're a verb form, they can have their own complements and their own modifiers. But as a unit, it's a sentence part. It's acting as a noun. And in this one, it's the predicate nominative in the sentence. Number 6, he succeeded by studying hard. All right, what's the action verb? What is the main verb or the linking verb? Well, it's the action verb succeeded. He is the subject of the sentence. Now, take a look at what's left. We have a preposition by. We have a gerund. And we have an adverb describing the gerund. In this sentence, we have a prepositional phrase. The object of the preposition is the gerund studying. It's a noun form, it's a verbal noun, but it's acting as the object of the preposition, by. So we have our gerund, it ends in ing, but it's the object of the preposition. And hard is an adverb that's describing within the prepositional phrase. But as a whole unit, the whole unit is a prepositional phrase, and it answers the question, how? Modifying succeeded, the verb. All right, so far we've got gerunds as subjects, because the gerund is a verbal noun. We've got gerunds as direct objects. We have a gerund used as a predicate nominative, and we have a gerund used as the object of the preposition in a prepositional phrase, because the gerund is a verb form acting as a noun. Number 7, she is skillful in designing clothes. What is the verb? Is the main verb. She is the subject. Is linking, therefore we have either a predicate adjective or a predicate nominative following it. Skillful, skillful describes, therefore we have a predicate adjective. In designing clothes, we have a preposition, we have a prepositional phrase. What is the object of the preposition? Designing, it's a gerund, verbal noun. Designing what? Clothes. The gerund has its own direct object, but as a unit, it's working together to describe. Skillful, all right, to what extent skillful in designing clothes? This is acting as an adjective preposition, an adverb prepositional phrase, modifying the adjective skillful. So it's acting as an adverb phrase. And this one also is acting as an adverb phrase. And the last one, and you have it, studying quietly without any music, improved his grades. Notice the punctuation. Let's find the subject and the verb. We know it won't be within the punctuation, all right? We know it's not found in a phrase. So what is the main? Improved. What improved his grades? Well, habit. Habit is the subject. All right, what was the habit? What group of words contains the verbal that's acting as a noun that's renaming or explaining the habit? Studying quietly without music. That is our verb form. That is our gerund and the gerund phrase. ING, studying quietly without any music. As a whole unit, that's explaining what the habit is. This is used as an appositive. An appositive is a noun that either explains or identifies another noun. This is a noun. It's a gerund phrase acting as an appositive, and the gerund is the verbal noun, studying. Now, improved what? Grades. We have a direct object in the main one. Now, let's take a look at the appositive phrase. Studying is the gerund. Studying how? Quietly. Well, it has its own adverb and without any music. So we have an adverb prepositional phrase within the gerund phrase, modifying studying. All right? So this is an adverb phrase as well. And a positive usually follows, the phrase will follow the noun or the pronoun that it's explaining or identifying. And when it is in a positive phrase, it's always set off by commas. That's one way to spot it. And a positive phrase is always set off by commas. We're going to take a look at the appositive and the appositive phrase coming up after we have finished our verbals. So the gerund, it's a verbal noun. Since it's a verbal noun, it acts as a subject, direct object, predicate nominative, object of a preposition, or an appositive. Since it is a verb form, it can have its own modifiers, whether it's an adverb or whether it's an adverb phrase, and it can have its own complements, a direct object. Could even have a predicate nominative. You can have a being verb as a gerund. All right, so that's our second verbal phrase. Now our third verbal phrase, this one's the one that's easy to spot, but takes a little bit of discernment and picking the sentence apart to see how the infinitive is used. If you remember when we talked about the infinitive, it's to, T-O, plus the verb. To sing, to pray, to preach, to explain. Those are infinitives, T-O. But the infinitive is a little more challenging in that it can be used as a noun, it can be used as an adjective or an adverb. So you really have to pick the sentence apart to see how the infinitive phrase is being used. And look at its location in the sentence, what comes before it, what follows it. And that also helps to discern what it's being used as. So let's take a look at the infinitive phrase and its characteristics in your notes. It says an infinitive phrase contains an infinitive, to, plus a verb, with any complements and modifiers. The second characteristic, the entire phrase may be used as a noun, an adjective, or an adverb. All right, another point. As a noun, the infinitive phrase may function as the subject, as the direct object, as a predicate nominative, or even as an appositive. So we're going to take a look at some sentences to see how the infinitive is used, the infinitive phrase. Let's find the infinitives in the sentences on the chalkboard. As I said before, the infinitive is easy to spot because of the to. So let's find the to plus the verb form, and we need to include any words that are working with it. To learn, all right? What words are working with it? To learn the game of chess. That's a whole unit. What's the main verb? Takes. When we're doing infinitives, we're kind of going to go backwards. I know before we've always found the verb in its subject, but since the infinitive can be used as a noun, we are going to find the to plus the verb form first, and then kind of go backwards from there. So to learn the game of chess, that's a whole infinitive phrase. The verb is takes. Takes what? Concentration. We have a direct object. Let's go back to the infinitive phrase. Notice its location. It precedes the action verb, and therefore it's being used as the subject. This is a noun being used as a subject. Remember I said they could be used as nouns, adjectives, or adverbs. All right, so we're taking a look at the nouns for now. So we've got it as the subject of the sentence. The whole unit is the subject. Now, take a look inside the unit. To learn what? Game. It has its own direct object. And what kind of game? Of chess. The direct object has its own adjective phrase as a modifier. But the whole unit, to learn the game of chess, is the subject of the sentence. That's what the sentence is about. Excuse me. Number 2, to reach a decision took only a moment. Again, let's find the to plus the verb form, and let's include any words that are working with the infinitive phrase. To reach a decision, that's the whole unit. Infinitive phrase. Now, what's the main verb of the sentence? Took. Took whom or what? Moment. Let's go back to the infinitive phrase. Take a look at its location. Comes before the action verb. This one also is functioning as a subject. It's a noun. Look within the infinitive phrase. To reach what? A decision. It has its own direct object. Number 3, they endeavored to launch the boat. What's to plus the verb form? To launch the boat. Working together. That's the infinitive phrase. Now, what's the main verb? Endeavored. Oh, look at its location. What's the subject? They endeavored what? To launch the boat. To launch the boat is an infinitive phrase functioning as the direct object of the verb endeavored. So we have direct object. Notice again the location. It's following an action verb. The answer is what? Number 4, he expects to rent his cottage for the summer. All right, here we have our verb, infinitive, to rent his cottage for the summer. We have a whole unit. What's the main verb? Expects. Who or what expects? He. He expects what? To rent his cottage for the summer. To rent his cottage for a summer is an infinitive phrase. Notice its location, following an action verb. This one's used as the direct object, following the action verb. So you can see there, just by those few examples, finding the infinitive and looking at its location in the sentence will help you discern how it's used. Number 5, his sound advice was to practice the fundamentals daily. Infinitive, to practice. What's working with it? To practice the fundamentals daily. We have a whole unit working together. All right, what's the main verb? It's a linking verb, was. What was? Advice is the subject. We have a linking verb. Well, what follows a linking verb? Predicate nominatives. Therefore, the infinitive phrase, to practice the fundamentals daily, following the linking verb, is acting as the predicate nominative. And again, we're looking at the infinitive as a noun. Number 6, short. To study is to learn. To study, to learn. These are just single infinitives. There is no infinitive phrase. There is nothing else working with these infinitives. Linking verb is. But let's look at the function of the infinitive. Well, this comes before the linking verb, so it's your subject. This follows the linking verb, so it's a predicate nominative. So in that sentence, we have two infinitives, one acting as a subject and one acting as a predicate nominative. Now, lastly, their goal to become the very best is admirable. Remember, we're still looking at infinitives as nouns. Notice the punctuation. What is the whole unit? To become the very best. Notice it's following a noun. Notice it's separated by commas. And what noun does that? Noun phrase. It's an infinitive. It's acting as a noun. It's following another noun. It's explaining the noun. Goal. What explains goal? To become the very best. We have an appositive. This infinitive phrase is acting as an appositive. It's identifying or explaining what the goal is. Now, within the infinitive phrase, to become, here we have a linking verb that's being used as an infinitive. The very best, we have an adjective. So this one within has its own predicate adjective. So those are how infinitives used as a noun, an infinitive phrase used as a noun. Subjects, they'll come before the verb. Direct object, they'll follow the verb and they'll answer who or what, usually what. For a predicate nominative, they'll follow the linking verb. This one precedes, this one follows, and then as an appositive, since it's an appositive phrase being used, it'll be separated by commas, always commas. That's one way that you can spot an appositive phrase. It follows a noun and it identifies it. And in this one, it's a verbal noun, it's the infinitive. So that's how an infinitive can be used as a noun. So let's continue on. We want to take a look at how it can be used as an adjective and also as an adverb. In the sentences on the board, let's continue looking at infinitives. We look at infinitives being used as a noun. Let's find the infinitive phrase as a unit acting as either an adjective or an adverb. Number 1, a truck to deliver the furniture must be obtained. While we know to deliver is the infinitive, what's working with to deliver? To deliver the furniture. What's the main verb? What's the action in the sentence? Must be obtained. What is the subject in the sentence? Truck. Notice to deliver the furniture is following the subject, the noun truck. All right? What kind of truck? To deliver the furniture. Remember, adjectives will answer the question, what kind of or which one? Keep in mind those questions when you're trying to decide how the infinitive phrase is being used. But a good sign, when it follows a noun, then usually it's the adjective. So this infinitive phrase is being used as an adjective. and it's modifying truck. Take a look within the infinitive phrase. We have the infinitive, and we have deliver what? Furniture. It has its own direct object. But as a unit, it's an adjective modifying what kind of truck, which one? Number 2, Samuel was the only one to finish the assignment. Well, let's find the infinitive. To finish, what's working with it? To finish the assignment. What's the verb in the sentence? Linking verb was. Who or what was? Samuel. We have a linking verb, therefore it's either followed by a predicate nominative or a predicate adjective. We have the pronoun one. Therefore, we have a predicate nominative. Notice what's following the predicate nominative. To finish the assignment. This time, it's being used as an adjective once again. It's modifying one. Notice within the infinitive phrase, we have assignment. It has its own direct object. All right, now that's within the phrase. Now, our predicate nominative also identifies the subject. So one in Samuel is being identified. Also, to finish the assignment is the adjective modifying the predicate nominative, one. Number 3, we exercised to maintain good health. What's the infinitive? To maintain, what's working with it? To maintain good health. We have a unit. The infinitive phrase. Let's go back to find the main verb. Exercised, subject, we. All right, exercised what? To maintain good health. That doesn't make sense. It's not being used as a noun. Let's think of other questions. We have what kind of or which one? No, it's following a verb. Therefore, it's acting as an adverb. Exercised why? To maintain good health. This time we have an adverb modifying exercise. The whole unit is acting as an adverb. And again, to maintain good health, within the phrase itself, it has its own direct object. Number 4, he has not practiced enough to be ready for the game. All right, here we have the infinitive to be. We had talked about that earlier, that you can have a linking verb be a verb form, a verbal. What's working with it? To be ready for the game. It's an infinitive phrase. Now, let's go back and find the main verb. Well, practiced is the action. Has is a helping verb working with. Has practiced. All right. Practiced, enough. To what extent practiced? Enough. Here we have an adverb. Enough to be ready for the game. This infinitive phrase is following an adverb. Therefore, it's being used as an adverb, as a unit, and it's modifying enough. This one is modifying the verb. It's following an adverb, so it's modifying enough. Hegel's philosophy is difficult to state simply. All right, what's the infinitive? To state. What's working with to state simply? Let's find the main verb. Is the subject, philosophy. Remember, when it's an apostrophe S, a noun that has an apostrophe S is possessive and it acts as an adjective describing philosophy. Now, we have a linking verb. Linking verbs are followed by predicate nominatives or predicate adjectives. Which one is difficult? Difficult is a predicate adjective. Predicate adjective is being followed by an infinitive phrase. To state simply, difficult, to state simply. It's being used as an adverb, this infinitive phrase. And as a unit, it's modifying difficult. So you'll notice that if an infinitive phrase follows an adverb, then usually usually it will answer that. What extent enough to be ready for the game? To what extent difficult to state simply? When it's following an adjective, it'll be an adverb. So an infinitive phrase can act as an adjective or can act as an adverb. If it's an adjective, it'll follow the noun it describes. If it's acting as an adverb, it will usually follow the verb. It will usually follow the adverb it's describing, and it will usually follow the adjective that it's describing. Now, in the last two, well, I guess it's just the number 6, the only one. Sometimes the TO is not there in a sentence. It's what we called an understood TO infinitive. Number 6 is an example of that. We watched the clouds drift by. The main verb is watched. The subject is we. Watched what? Clouds. Clouds is your direct object. Then we're followed by another verb. It's not a participle because it's not ending in ing or ed. It's not a gerund, it's not ending in ing. The word to is understood. We watched the clouds to drift by. It sounds awkward when we put it in, but this is an infinitive, and this is an infinitive phrase. But the to is understood. It's not there. And there are many sentences where there are infinitive phrases or just infinitives, but the TO is not there. So keep that in mind, finding the verb in the subject. And then if you have another verb form following a noun, and it doesn't have an ending for it to be a gerund or a participle, then you probably have an infinitive with the to being omitted. Now let's look at its function. It does have a function. Notice it's following the noun. What about the clouds? Well, the clouds drift by. This one's being used as an adjective. So that's called the omitted infinitive. The TO is not there. And in number 7, we asked our young neighbor to mow the grass. Well, what's the infinitive? Well, it's to mow. What's working with the infinitive? Grass. What is the main verb in the sentence? Asked. What is the subject? We. We asked whom or what? Neighbor. Direct object. Now, this is just a little added extra. I wanted to point this out. And even in this one, we'll come back to the omitted to. In this one, we have the to there, but it is a verb form, so it can have a subject just of itself. And the subject is neighbor, neighbor to mow the grass. And when you think about it, the whole thing altogether is acting as a direct object. Now that might be a little confusing, but sometimes that's the way it comes. When we have a direct object and it's followed by an infinitive, then the whole unit itself is the direct object. And the same with this one. We watched clouds drift by. The whole unit in itself is acting as a direct object. Even though the infinitive phrase is modifying the noun, describing the noun. The whole unit, since it has a direct object before it, the whole unit is acting as a direct object. So that's just a little extra added in, but sometimes you don't have the to in there as well. So let's just do an overview of the infinitive. Acts as a noun, can be the subject, a direct object, can be object of the preposition, a predicate nominative, and a positive. The infinitive phrase can act as a modifier. If it's an adjective, it will follow the noun it describes. If it's acting as an adverb, it'll follow the verb. It'll follow the adverb it's describing or the adjective it's describing. And also, the TO can be missing. It's what we call the omitted to. Now, let's just review verbals in general. All right, verbals. Well, a verbal is a verb form. Since it is a verb form, the whole verbal phrase, within it, it can have its own single adverb modifiers, its own prepositional phrase modifiers, and its own complements. We have the participial phrase, which is the verbal adjective. We have the gerund phrase, which is the verbal noun. And we have the infinitive phrase that can be either used as a noun or as an adjective or as an adverb. Now, the last phrase I want to take a look at is not the verbal, but we've looked at this particular kind in other ways, and that's the appositive phrase. So take a look at your notes and let's take a look at the appositive phrase. An appositive phrase contains an appositive, which is a noun. And this noun can have its own modifiers, its own adjectives and its own adjective phrases. Now, an appositive and an appositive phrase identifies or explains a noun. And usually the appositive phrase will follow the noun it identifies. I'll say usually because not always. But usually the appositive phrase follows the noun it identifies. And it's set apart by commas because it's added information. So we'll take a look at a couple of sentence examples that show an appositive and a positive phrase. Sentence number 1. Nehemiah, the king's cupbearer, rebuilt the walls to Jerusalem. Easy to spot the appositive phrase because it's set off by commas. It's added information. It explains Nehemiah. What's the verb in the sentence? The main verb, rebuilt. Who or what rebuilt? Nehemiah. The king's cupbearer. Within that appositive phrase, what is the appositive? What is the single noun that identifies Nehemiah? And that's cupbearer. Cupbearer is the appositive noun. The kings are adjectives describing cupbearer. Number 2, Moses, the leader of the Israelites, defied the king of Egypt. Again, easy to spot. That's the appositive phrase set off by commas following the noun that it's renaming or identifying. The main verb in the sentence, defied. Who or what defied? Moses. Now, within the appositive phrase, what's just the appositive? What is only the noun that's identifying Moses? That would be leader. Leader is the positive. The leader of the Israelites is the appositive phrase. It's a whole unit working together to identify Moses. Notice that it has an adjective phrase within the appositive phrase that's describing leader. So appositive phrases usually follow the noun that they identify. And they're easy to spot because the punctuation of the comma is required when you use them. Now, you can have single word appositives. Let me just give you an example. Our dog Jack can be mischievous. All right, what is the main verb? Can be. All right, who or what can be? And this is where you have to be careful. We've got two nouns. In this sentence, the appositive Jack is identifying the subject, dog. You can have single word appositives that follow a noun. And in this case, we do. We have two nouns together. Jack is identifying dog, explaining what it is. When you have a single word positive, no commas. All right, it all works together side by side. So no comma is only when it's in a positive phrase. Now, take a look at your notes, and let's just review what we have for phrases. You'll notice the chart. It has the kind of phrase, it has its function, and also it has its form. So let's just go through the chart. The first kind was prepositional. The function is adjective or adverb. And notice its form. It's a preposition plus a noun or a pronoun. And that noun or a pronoun is called the object of the preposition. The next three are what we call the verbal phrases. The first one, participial. The function, it's an adjective. Its form, you have your present participle that ends in ing. You have the past form that ends in d, ed, t, or en. The next one is the gerund. The gerund, its function, it functions as a noun, which can be a subject, a direct object, a predicate nominative, an object of the preposition, and an appositive. The verb form is ending in ing. The next verbal, the infinitive, its function, it's a noun. When it is a noun, it's the subject, the direct object, the predicate nominative, or an appositive. Or the infinitive can be an adjective or an adverb. The form of the infinitive is to plus a verb, and sometimes the to is omitted, remember that. And then the last kind of phrase is the appositive. The appositive is a noun. That's its function, and it's a noun itself. And the form of it is an ordinary noun. However, as we saw by the other examples, a gerund can be used as a noun, as an appositive, and also the infinitive can also be used as an appositive, identifying another noun. Now, when we looked at the infinitives, they're set off by commas. Often, and this is just a little note for writing, you can take an infinitive out of a sentence and still have a complete thought. Nehemiah rebuilt the walls to Jerusalem, but the king's cupbearer is just adding description. It makes it interesting. Moses defied the king of Egypt, but the appositive, the leader of the Israelites, just adds extra. It gives a little more explanation. And then for this one, our dog can be mischievous, all right? But our dog Jack, that just identifies dog. And again, single word appositive, no comma. So phrases, the main kinds, prepositional, verbal. Verbal is participial, gerund, and infinitive. And then we looked at the appositive phrase. And remember, a phrase is a group of related words working together as a single part of speech. And mainly nouns, adjectives, and adverbs.